It's long been thought that where our homes are placed can have an effect on our energy and the energy felt within that home, affecting your sleep and also your well-being. Homes near busy roads or on flight paths or close to railway lines are the obvious examples. But what about the ancient energy underneath our homes? Water tables, traumatic events close to our home, how do they affect you? So I thought it would be helpful to find out more about geopathic stress detection. In this series, we explore health and wellness under the premise that some illnesses and diseases may be avoidable. Each week, I interview experts and dive deep into an aspect of health and wellness, with the aim of giving you greater understanding so that you can feel free to make the best choices about your health based on your individual uniqueness. If you want to explore your health and wellness, subscribe and hit the bell and get notified of all of our latest uploads as and when they happen. And if this channel can help your friends and family, please also share it with them too. This week we're diving deep into geopathic stress detection, and my guest is house healer and alternative life coach Tim Walter. So Tim, what is geopathic stress and what are some of the causes?
Well, this term geopathic stress is one of the many labels in the sort of alternative health scene, I guess, that a lot of people have different opinions of. One of the issues that we find is that in a lot of this stuff that isn't mainstream well-being activity, there's a lot of confusion about the labels and there's a lot of overlapping of what people perceive it to be. So at its most simplest term, some people regard geopathic stress as being the effect of what they call earth energy adversely upon people occupying homes or buildings where they work. We'll go into perhaps what earth energy is in a minute, but broadly, it is more about what they call earth rays, so radiation of sorts coming up from underground sources, whether that be water or chemical reactions underground. I actually build geopathic stress as a term that incorporates far more than just that, because geopathic stress to me actually is about all of the influences from what we would call subtle energy, those things that are on the very edge of our physical perception, how they adversely affect an occupant of a house. So that, in my definition of geopathic stress, we're talking about electromagnetic radiation, we're talking about underground water flows, as we said, even impacts from things like, main roads, for example. All of that sort of pollution can be regarded as geopathic stress. Sometimes the fabrics that the building's made from, sometimes where the building has been built, there are effects from the actual place. And not all of this stuff is necessarily sitting very mainstream. So sometimes we are dealing with what we would call place memory, rather than specific chemical pollution of a site, for example. So it's a real mixed bag. And geopathic stress really, it's one of those things that not everybody is going to be susceptible to it. What we tend to find is that we are approached by very highly sensitive people. So people that find that they're sensitive to all sorts of things, even chemical sensitivities, they're far more likely to be susceptible to the effects of geopathic stress.
That's really interesting, Tim, because I know that, I guess, in the past, excuse me, where I've lived in different houses over the years and just kind of felt a different energy in each kind of those streets that I've lived in. As you go over the years, I've gone back to some of those places and just actually been quite surprised, with the ones where there are main roads and dual carriageways running, quite close to it, how that felt, and also a street within in the middle of a very large estate and how different that felt. But I mean, that was just, and I suppose obviously people would understand if they're living near a busy road, the flow of energy and how that may affect them if they live by train lines, for example. But I'd never thought about the fabric of a house, or maybe even the site where that house was originally built before roads and everything else was added, and the water underneath it and that kind of thing. It's really interesting, fascinating what you're saying. So How do we really know, though, that geopathic stress exists?
Yeah, I mean, well, there's one way is people come to me with problems, and I help them, and so therefore they reflect a change. So that's one thing, but that's just my anecdotal sort of results. So there was a lot of empirical evidence, shall we say, in Germany in the last century about underground water flows in particular, where particular flows of water might cross and somebody might be sleeping above that crossing point, so the head of the bed might be in that position. There seem to be indicators that actually quite a numerically high percentage of people that were sleeping in those situations actually developed a cancer. Wow. Now, that wasn't proven scientifically. That was just anecdotal. And again, traditionally in Europe, in mainland Europe, shall we say, the communities as a whole, the society as a whole, is far more open to the concept that the environment can affect the well-being of the individual than we are over here in Britain. In Britain, we're very, oh no, that sounds completely too far off the scale. That's too woo-woo. But what's been happening more and more, obviously, it's to do with the way that neuroscience is developing as well. But there's been more investigation, more scientific exploration of, well, is there anything in not only perhaps the subtle energies from the environment affecting us, but also in ways of detecting them. And there's a gentleman by the name of Dr. Konstantin Korotkov, who is actually, I've got a note here, I believe it was in the St. Petersburg University. There we go. Now, he's done some really interesting work on geopathic stress. He's developed a machine that actually monitors the electrical field of an individual. And so what he's found is that actually he can place people. He's done scientifically based experiments where he will take a lot of guinea pigs, a lot of people, and place them in different areas where he suspects there's geopathic stress, monitors the electrical field of those individuals. And what he has found is that, yes, there is definitely a reduction in the electrical field, so effectively life force, if you want to use that term, from those individuals at these spots of what he would term geopathic stress. And that has been, as far as I know, it's been peer reviewed. It certainly is accepted as, scientific evidence that something is affecting these people, reducing their electrical field. So Konstantin Korotkov is really an interesting gentleman. So how do we know it exists? Well, it's in this area of science that is right up one end of the scale, where it's in the subtle energies. So it's what science would refer to as subtle energies. And a lot of scientific thinking says, well, let's not even look at subtle energies, because those energies are not part of the four fundamental forces of physics. So they're not part of the weak or strong nuclear forces, electromagnetic force, or gravity. Gravity is a bit of an odd one, but let's not go there today. Okay. So subtle energies exist at one end of the scale. Yeah. And in fact, you described the way that you can go to a location and think, oh, this feels different. And subtle energies would fit into that category of, oh, the perception is, what's the feeling like? Or if somebody stares at you in a particular way, and you get a particular feeling, that would be classified as subtle energy, right. This exchange. Yeah. So it's very much on this very subtle perception. So geopathic stress is all about that kind of interaction. And in order to register it, in order to monitor it, you need some very sensitive equipment. And that's the sort of thing that Korotkov has put together and uses. And he uses them in identifying health issues, and he works with the energy meridians of the body, the same as acupuncturists use. So yeah, some really interesting work. But yeah, geopathic stress is real. It's just that most of us haven't heard of it.
I think what's interesting as well, to what you said a few minutes ago, is that it affects different people in different ways as well. I guess we can all go and sit in a park and feel somehow, different because of the fresh air, or go for a walk in the woods. The energy there is different from at home. But I guess when you're at home, some people it's affecting in a different way. Maybe they're not sleeping, or don't feel rested when they're at home. They maybe feel agitated or more agitated at home than maybe even they do at work, or the other way around. Because I guess this can affect workplace as well as home.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, geopathic stress and sick building syndrome, which you might have heard of. I mean, there's aspects that overlap. And in fact, I tutor people. I teach people the house healing methodology. And one of my students recently, effectively, he was a freelancer and he'd gone into work in a building and he said, God, this building's terrible. If there's so many people being ill, he did a clearing on it using the method that I use. And suddenly, and literally, people were commenting like, well, something's changed around here. I feel a lot better in this office. So sick building syndrome can be adjusted by this sort of methodology, which is really interesting. And the other thing is, of course, as you say, the specific difference is the environment of the home being an artificial one, and being outside in nature. Now, the biology of what happens to a person when they are outside in nature is very specific. There's dopamine released, there's all sorts of hormones released that are well-being. They create well-being. Now, we're in a society at the moment, certainly in the West, where there's so much depression, where people are so depressed and have mental illness issues. But a lot of that is actually because simply they're not having contact with nature. They're not getting the dopamine and the other hormone levels that they need. So our buildings have a massive part to play in our health and wellness, without a doubt.
Fantastic. If you're enjoying the video, please do hit the like button and tell us what insights that you're getting from hearing Tim in the comments. Love to hear about all of those. Tim, how do we go about geopathic stress detection, and how do we remove it?
Well, I said earlier on that subtle energies were right down one end of the mainstream scientific method. The most reliable way of actually I'll tell you about the way that I work, which is clearly the easiest way of doing this. I work as a dowser, so I use dowsing, which is a form of meditation, and I basically bring information from a site anywhere in the world. You can link to it. So you go into a meditative state, you link to the site using a floor plan, and I bring out information that I pick up through intuition, through that process of dowsing. Okay, so I'm holding this because I'm holding a pendulum when I'm doing it, and I'm working with a floor plan. Dowsing is contentious. There's no two ways about it. There are massive critics of dowsing who say, no, it just doesn't work, it's not scientific, it's not possible. There have been similar experiments about dowsing as there have been about geopathic stress. And there's one that actually has just got the label of the Munich barn experiment, which was done in the late 80s. Now, I'll just tell you about this because I think it's really interesting. It's actually quite funny as well. The Munich barn experiment was conducted by a guy called Dr. Hans-Dieter Betz. And this was the University of Munich. And I'm just looking down at my notes here because I never remember these names. But the German government basically spent 200,000 marks and 2 years looking into, does dowsing work? Because they wanted to verify, could it be used to actually find sources of drinking water reliably and cheaply? That's basically why they looked into it. They wanted to explore in some foreign countries about providing water. And Dr. Hans-Dieter Betz did a study. He had 500 candidates who came in to douse hidden objects underground. Yeah. They had a massive array within this barn of water pipes that could have flowing water through them, and they could be moved. And they were on the ground floor, and dowsers were on the top floor, and they were asked to detect where these water flows were. Now, what Dr. Betz found was that overall, when conducted in this scientific methodology, the dowsing of 500 was actually no better than chance, right? So that's interesting. But the key thing is that there were 43 individuals whose results were extraordinarily accurate. So that's a little below 10% of people that were dowsing. And he actually said that the success rate of average dowsers was found to be bad and could hardly or not at all be distinguished from pure chance. That's what we just said. In certain test species, some dowsers exhibited sufficiently high success rate which could hardly or not at all be ascribed to or explained by pure chance. So how does dowsing work? Well, he says the performance of the entire pool of tested persons was highly significant and therefore could not be attributed to pure chance. Furthermore, the observations could not be explained by conventional effects. No attempt had been made to establish the cause of the observed effects, but subsequent studies should be continued and questions asked about the relationship between the Earth and the human being. So, so the different, so different dowsers reach a degree of agreement which cannot yet be explained by conventional reasoning. So in other words, science doesn't understand how it works. What we think, the reason we think it works, is that actually we are connecting from the subconscious through the quantum zero-point field that affects absolutely everything. And in quantum physics, as you're probably aware from your own research and understanding, is that really in that level of reality, here is there is here, there is no distance. And so therefore, this makes sense of how a person such as me doing the dowsing can actually bring information from a location on the other side of the world. So we think that we interact with that quantum field and we pull information out of that quantum field and therefore we bring it back into this Newtonian physics-led reality that we have here. So it's all about really the power of the subconscious of the individual, and that's what we know we link into when we meditate. And when we do dowsing, when we've got the dowsing mode, we are meditating. There's no two ways about it.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question? I can't remember what you asked.
It does. It's fascinating as well to hear you talk about this, because several years ago, just to explain to everyone, Tim actually did a floor plan of my home and dowsed from his house on the energy of my home. And what I found really fascinating about that was Joe and I have lived here for 16 years now. And we rarely fall out, but you identified 2 black spots in our home, which were exactly where those 2 things happened. The other funny thing was you put a mark on the floor plan in one of the bedrooms and said there's some negative energy here as well. And it's actually in the bedroom of one of my kids, and I showed them this, and they went, "Yeah, I sit there when I'm in a mood."
Yeah.
So what I found is really fascinating that you were able to very accurately pinpoint, and then so when it comes to detecting it, it's interesting to hear that so many people have had a go at this, but some people have such fantastic results from the studies that they did. So people are able to detect this. So fantastic. Tim, sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to say, I think that, Dr. Betts was working on that principle of about 10% of being successful dowsers. And this was very specifically about looking for water, underground water. What I think that the percentage of people that can be trained to be good dowsers is much higher than 10%. I think that dowsing is a natural ability that everybody has, but it's just like playing the piano. Not everybody's a concert pianist. So and also, all of the dowsing that I do, not every single dowsing question that I ask isn't correct. I reckon there's about 70-80% accuracy rate in the stuff that I do. So yeah, I mean, but what you've described is typical of what I find with clients, is that it's like they come back and say, "How did you know this? What is this? How did you know I had this this argument in 1976 or whatever it was?" It's not quite like that, but yeah
sure.
But it's very typical to find a very specific location where somebody might sit and be depressed, for example. And those are the things that we clear away, so that the residue, the subtle energies of those particular hotspots is no longer affecting the people living in that space. And the thing to remember, of course, is it's not necessarily your baggage, your emotional debris that you're living in.
Yeah.
You know, if this house, for example, is 500 years old, that's 500 years of people living in this space. Now, obviously, before we moved in, this was well cleared, so we're not influenced necessarily. But the previous owner was living here for 35 years. That 35 years of energy, it hangs around. So this is not a quick fix, but there's varying levels that you can go to. So
it's interesting because you've got the energy of the people that lived in the house. You've got the energy of the area that the house is built on, and there's also what goes on underneath. And I suppose there's also kind of like traumas that may have happened around that. Just thinking like where I live now is old farmland. So obviously there's lots of cattle grazed over here over the years, probably some died, that kind of thing. Then in the war years, this area where my house is built was actually used as a prisoner of war camp. So there's obviously an energy that comes in with that. And then about 15 miles away, I think a couple of 100 years ago, there was a tsunami that hit that coastline and obviously caused some devastation. So there's lots of things that sort of gone on around here that I guess can leave, as you're saying, kind of a residue of energy. Yeah,
this is the sort of thing that we talk about as place memory. The tsunami, the shock and the trauma that would have been caused by that to any living thing, that would remain in varying degrees in varying hotspots around the place. There's place memory, that sort of thing, yeah. It's not just human emotion by any means. The natural world has a massive impact and an influence upon us as well, detrimentally sometimes, but also you can use it positively. And that's the whole point, is that the work that we do as house healers, I don't like the term healer, but that's just it's a label, and what else do we call ourselves? I don't know. But the work that we do is to rebalance the energy of the space. We simply use focused intent. Simply, it's an acquired skill, if you like, to actually focus sufficiently to affect a change in somebody else's reality. But that's fundamentally what we're doing. But we're also working in harmony with the client by doing that work. A lot of this could be said to be, affecting the cognitive bias of the individual that we're working with. My label is house healer and alternative life coach, and that's very deliberate because a lot of the work I do is one-to-one work with the client. Once we've done a clearing and they've seen a change, they want to know more, and a lot of that is about readjusting the individual's perception of who they are in their world. Because it's really important, the fact that every individual is different. And this is where alternative therapies often differ massively from mainstream medical practice, because mainstream medical practice simply cannot address the individual. They don't have time. And also pharmaceuticals are not designed to do individual specific work. They're designed to create a change over a massive data set of people, and consequently you get all the side effects. But what we're dealing with is very much the individual subtle nuances of each person, and they have a whole belief system that you're actually working with as well. So
yeah, interesting. This is really what we're all about here at Total Wellness Club, really, because we're into the natural health and well-being. We're into what we can do to prevent ill health from happening in the first place. Medicine has its place, I think, but if you can avoid negative things in the first place, then you probably won the battle. Tim, when I'm interviewing all of my guests, I like to ask them to leave us with a challenge, a little something that we can do over the next few weeks. It could be something we can do just for once, or it could be for a day, or it could be for a week, entirely up to you. So what would your challenge be, not just to me, but to the community as a whole, if they want to get involved?
I love the idea. A lot of the content that I have on my YouTube channel is about learning to dowse. It's all about dowsing and introducing people to dowsing. So what you'll find, if people visit my YouTube channel, there is a playlist that is Learn to Dowse, and there's a couple of videos in there about literally taking people through stage one. Pick up, get some rods, make some rods, practice, get a response from those rods for yourself. So my challenge basically is, learn to douse. Look at those videos. Hopefully you'll put a link somewhere, but look at those videos.
Yeah, send us a link.
And learn to, you pick up a couple of sets of rods, make them yourself if you want to, and learn to douse. And then if you get successful with actually getting a good response that you feel confident with, I would love people to go off and find specifically the most powerful earth energy center, the most positive and powerful earth energy center in their homes. That's kind of a two-stage challenge, and that could take people some time. But the main one is just get some response from rods, because it's absolutely fascinating.
That would be really interesting. So will you give me a couple of links I can pop into the description below?
I'll do that.
So people can learn to douse themselves, and perhaps if you've got something on the dowsing rods as well, how to make them, that would be fantastic.
That's exactly
there.
Yeah. Program 1 shows you how to bend a couple of coat hangers.
Brilliant. Even wooden ones. Tim, thank you for your time. It's been really fascinating learning about this from you. What I found interesting talking to Tim just now was that some people might be affected by geopathic stress, whereas other people maybe not so much. But also that different things can affect us, can affect our home and the energy within that home. It's not just the people that are living there now, it's the people that lived there before, and in some cases for hundreds of years before. It's the roads that have been built around that can potentially affect us, but also the flow of water or trauma within the land or something can also have an effect on us as well. Tim's also left us with an interesting challenge. Are you up for that challenge? I will put the links that Tim mentioned down below. Please go and take a look at what he's suggesting that we do in terms of learning to douse and having a go at that. Look out for my video where I do a challenge roundup from all of the videos from all of our experts, where I take on their challenges and document the evidence. If you're going to take on that challenge, please also do make a comment below. Tell us what you're doing. Tell us how you're getting on with it. We'd love to know. To get that challenge roundup video and all of our latest uploads, please subscribe to the channel and hit the bell. And if this channel can help your friends and family, please also share it with them too. Also, if you want to get proactive with your health, then Total Wellness Club are developing health quests over at questly.life. Join while we're developing the site and get access to health quests that immediately personalise your health. You'll get to identify which of 10 critical categories need your attention. You'll be able to track your progress, and you'll be able to help us develop the platform. I'll put a link for Questly into the description down below, and I'll see you next week.